Hello, Ability. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that, like us, you are safe and healthy in your homes or wherever you're shacked up watching this. So my friend and co-speaker today, Dan Baker, and I had this big plan that we were going to show up and regale you with lots of charts and graphs and stats and data about how tech and accessibility go together like mac and cheese and breadcrumbs. But we thought that's kind of boring. Not the mac and cheese part, that's good. But looking at charts and graphs when we're sitting at home, that doesn't sound fun. Actually, that never sounds fun. So we thought, instead of all this, why don't Dan and I have a fight and all of you can listen? Who'd be up for that? Dan, you're up for having a fight and letting all these fine people listen in?
I'm up for this, Donna. Let's have a fight with technology. Let's use this technology the best.
Exactly. Okay. So, and why don't you tell everyone who you are? We are going to flip through a set of slides that I'm going to advance. And Dan, tell everyone who you are.
So, hey, everyone. My name's Dan, and I'm an evangelist at Microsoft, but I am not a developer.
I like how you claim this, yet you do a lot of dev work. But that brings us back to the topic of what we're going to be talking about. Fight number one. So I'm Dona Sarkar. I am a developer. I work right now with the Power Platform team. I lead advocacy for the Power Platform. I focus heavily on both citizen devs and professional devs. Historically, I worked on things like HoloLens and the Windows Insider program, etc. And between Dan and I, the reason we got together to give this talk and hang out with all of you is because both of us believe that anyone in the world can create tech solutions to solve their own problems. They don't have to be a dev to do that. And they can have whatever varies of ability to solve their own problems, because no one understands truly their own ability and their own needs better than themselves. So we have a very interesting story from Dan. Tell us a little bit about your son and your family situation and what you did about it.
So yeah, the first story is the magic mirror. Now, it's an interesting story, and Donna, it's all based on routine. Now, like many, I wake up each morning and I reach for my smart device to find out where I need to be, what meetings I have, and how I'm going to get there. But more importantly is the routine for my son. You see, he has mild Asperger's, and because of this, his life is driven by consistency. He doesn't respond well to change, which means routine makes him feel stable. In fact, if we go back a few years when he was getting ready for what we call big boy school, we knew that he would have real trouble adjusting. So to help, I used to have a dry whiteboard in his room, and I would write what we would do the following day every evening before he went to sleep. You know, things like we're going to get up, we're going to get dressed, eat our breakfast, brush our teeth, and then drive to school. This comforted him, which in turn gave great comfort to me. But being a fan of technology, I wanted to digitize the process. I found that the developer community had created some software called the Magic Mirror. I was sold. I had an old laptop running Linux. I had an old monitor, and I proceeded to head to my shed so that I could drill big holes through the kitchen cupboard and into the landing. Fortunately, though, it dawned on me that I was perhaps doing IT the old-fashioned way. I didn't want to maintain computers and operating systems. I certainly didn't want to mess up the kitchen with my dreadful DIY skills. So I migrated the app and all of its dependencies into a Docker container, and I hosted it in Azure. This was brilliant. It gave me the functionality that I wanted, but also meant that all I needed was a cheap tablet because, all of the processing was now being done remotely. What's more, because it was now hosted, it became portable and accessible from anywhere and on any connected device, meaning that when changes happened, I could update his schedule and he would be notified so that he could prepare. Now, honestly, we haven't used this for a few years. He doesn't need it anymore. But at the time, it was invaluable and helped alleviate anxiety in a period of great change. So that's the story of the Magic Mirror.
You know what I really like about that story, Dan, and why I keep making you tell it, It's because you identified a very specific need that your family has. And no specialist on the planet can really predict what your son needs. Only you know, and only he knows. And no tech person can build a solution for kids with autism, right? Not well. I mean, we can try, but until we co-create with people like you and your son, there's no way. Like, I, as a developer, would never have come up with this idea of projecting a thing on a tablet that has his schedule. I would have thought, oh, that's so basic. We need way more. We need it to measure heart rate. We need it to measure this. We need to measure that. Maybe wear a watch on the wrist, etc. But you realize the most important thing he needs is just predictability. He needs to know what's next, so he doesn't deal with anxiety. And you were able to use existing tools. You used existing tools to do that. And you took something that existed and ran it in a Docker container on Azure, tech you know very well, to solve this problem. But I thought the funnier story was the Minecraft server. So I'd love for you to tell everyone that story.
Yeah, the Minecraft story. I hope he never sees this presentation. But like many kids, my son loves playing video games. And Minecraft is one of his all-time favorites. He will spend hours making the tools and building new worlds, and more often than not, expect me to join in. And Donna, this terrifies me. As a middle-aged man, I can honestly say that I have no idea what I'm doing. I literally spend half my time, looking at the buttons, trying to figure out which one I need to press. And as every parent will attest, this simply won't do. Fortunately, we now live in a connected world where people can play with other like-minded gamers over the internet. But this gave me another headache. You see, I want my son to be able to reach out and communicate with others. But as a parent, and especially because of his condition, I also want to strongly police who he's playing with and ensure that he's protected. So again, I turned to technology. And I built him his own Minecraft server in Azure. This was nothing more than going into the marketplace and filling out a form, specifying things like the name of the server and how large it should be. Within a couple of minutes, I had the server up and running and pointed my son towards it to play. But it also meant that I could whitelist the accounts that could play with him. So I spoke to the parents at the school. I talked to his friends and family, and I configured their online access. And it was perfect, Donna. The kids could play online, and the parents were happy that they were safe. It was a win-win situation. But here is the plot twist. You see, as far as the kids are concerned, at 9:30, the cloud goes to bed. There's no arguments. There's no, Dad, you're so unfair. I've told my son that Satya turns the cloud off, and it's brilliant. I never have to be the bad person. But if we bring this back down into industry, couldn't this approach work across all deployments? Isn't this the whole idea behind elasticity and agility in the cloud? I believe it is. We're no longer bound by the restraints of on-premises deployments. We can set schedules, we can enforce limits, and we can feel confident that we will only ever pay for the resources that we consume. So that's the Minecraft story.
I think this, Dan, is so applicable to all of you parents who have kids at home right now. We're probably always begging, like, we want more screen time, we want more video game time, especially Minecraft Dungeons just came out. So I'm seeing a bunch of, chatter on Twitter about that. And I can imagine that there's a lot of parents who would be grateful for this, where, hey, the cloud goes to sleep at bedtime, insert bedtime here, and the cloud only wakes up after you do your distance learning. So the cloud is, quite fickle, and it sleeps for 16 hours a day, like our house cat. And I love the idea that parents can actually control, first, who their kid interacts with online, because that's a terrifying thought for every parent, I can imagine. And second, just the timing and how often they can have access to this, but still being able to have like a collaborative environment with a whitelisted set of people. I thought this was just so clever and so interesting. So all of you parents out there who are looking for a way to have your kids be able to game safely, hit up Dan, because he's done it. And this is not just for his autistic child, this is for any kids.
Yeah, and remarkably easy to do.
Your family, though, is not are not the only people benefited from tech. You've undergone quite the physical change. So tell us a little bit about this.
So yeah, this last story, this is where I hit the home run, Donna. You know, in
Hmm.
my last example, I want to talk about my own personal battle with diabetes. Now, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes almost 30 years ago. But if I'm brutally honest, I never really understood it or what it was doing to my body. You see, like many, I passively followed the advice of my medical team, then consumed more and more medication as the symptoms progressed. Towards the end, I was having 4 injections a day and 12 tablets every day just to stay alive. Now, this puts significant strain on the NHS, who today currently spend around £9 billion a year treating the 500 million people in the UK who are thought to be living with a condition. For me, though, this really came to a head in late 2017 when I was diagnosed with diabetic retinopathy. Now, this is a breakdown of the cells in the back of my eyes, which, if left untreated, would eventually lead to my blindness. At this point, I knew that I needed to take ownership of the condition, so I decided that I would reduce the problem to data. With that, I did my research and found out about the Night Scout project and the community behind it. And I'll be honest with you, I had total imposter syndrome. As I said right at the beginning, I'm not a developer. And as I approached them, I kept thinking to myself, I'm not a developer. I don't belong with these people. But you know what? That quickly faded. I couldn't believe just how much information was available and how willing people were to help me. It actually made me reevaluate what the definition of a developer was. These were not superhumans with their head buried in code. They were just a bunch of people who, like me, wanted to make things better. So through the project, I set up continuous glucose monitoring. I purchased a sensor that would go into my arm, and this would allow me to take readings by using my NFC reader from my phone. But then I found an NFC bridge that could automate this process. And by doing that, I was able to push the data up into the cloud and visualize everything in Microsoft Power BI. I couldn't believe how simple it was to connect everything together. This in turn gave me the confidence to collect data from the other wearables that I was using. I mean, why not the sleep data from my fitness tracker or my punch statistics from my boxing trackers or even my body composition from the machines at the gym? You know, the thing that struck me is we're surrounded by data, and why wasn't I making better use of it? Now, here's where the story gets interesting. By seeing this massive influx of data and being able to set trends, I began to get better insights into what my diet and my exercise routines were doing to my body. By reducing the problem to data, I was able to see the facts. I had clarity, and clarity empowers you to make better decisions. So I began self-experimenting. I started looking at what I was eating, how long it took to elevate my sugar levels, and how long they would remain high. What I discovered was that my sugar levels were not dropping. And this was because the data proved that it was the mean time between meals. They were simply set too low. Let me elaborate. It takes between 8 to 12 hours for the body to digest food, with the macronutrients beginning to break it down at around the 3.5 hour mark. But we're having 3 meals per day. And even if we're generous and say that they're spaced out at 7 hours, we're still not allowing the digestive cycle to complete. On top of this, we like to snack. We're all guilty of it, be it banana or biscuit. You know, whatever we eat will break that digestive cycle. But not only this, it was when I ate that had an impact. For example, if I ate my breakfast at 6 a.m., my sugar levels would be higher than if I ate that exact same meal some 2 hours later. Now, I believe that that's because of cortisol, our fight or flight hormone. You see, when we wake up, our cortisol levels are elevated. It sets us up for the day and ensures that we get out of bed. This in turn increases insulin production, which can in turn cause insulin resistance, especially if you have metabolic syndrome. So eating when my cortisol levels were elevated caused my blood sugar levels to be higher. Ultimately, I found that my optimal eating pattern was one large meal per day between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. This meant that my sugar levels would rise, but then significantly reduce as the day progressed. What's more, by not having to process food, my sleep cycles began to improve. I fell asleep easier, and the quality of sleep was that much higher. Again, by collecting the data from the devices around me, I began to build a better picture of what was happening to my body. This enabled me to make the right decisions. So where are we today? Well, Donna, we're in a good place. I've sent you the picture where I'm 70 pounds lighter, I'm 11 inches smaller, and I haven't used any medication for over a year. And what's amazing about this is with the recent adjustments to life, obviously it's had its repercussions. With the lockdown and the closure of the gyms, I've had to, again, use this data to help identify and respond and then reflect on the changes that are happening to my body. I'm far from fixed, but what technology is doing is it's allowing me to tackle the issues without medication too. The right tools are providing me with the insights that I need to stay on top of the situation. This tied in with a little grit and determination, are empowering me to live a healthier and a happier life. So that's my home run tech story, but enough about me. Now, Donna, I know you're an amazing developer. I mean, I sat there and I watched you present at Build last week and, proudly told all my friends that I'd be presenting with you this week at the Ability Summit. But I also know that you have your own empowering story and wondered if you'd be kind enough to share it with us.
I will share my story, Dan. But first, I'd like to take a moment and just appreciate the huge physical challenge you've gone through, because to lose, how many kilograms did you lose?
So it was 70 pounds. So what's that?
70 pounds. 70 pounds. That's like a whole child. That's a lot of pounds. And you did this by yourself, just by tracking your health stats,
in 1 year.
Looking at, for a year. It's insane. It's actually insane to think about this, because, all of us are kind of stuck at home wondering if our health is just like going straight out the window, what we're doing, what we're not doing. And we have the tools right at our own fingertips to do this. And you've proven that you don't need to be a developer to do this. You don't need to be a doctor to do this. You're neither a dev nor a doctor. Yet you've been able to hack your situation at home so you know when to eat, what to eat, and just what you need to be the healthiest version of you. And, pictures don't lie. You're unrecognizable 2 years ago. I'm so happy that you're healthy. You're happy. You're just like so vibrant right now when you're talking to everyone. It's wonderful. I have my own tale of drama that I'd like to share with everyone. So a few weeks ago, I was asked to host the annual Microsoft Developers Conference called Build. Build has historically been in person. This year it was virtual, like everything. And, people said, hey, would you be interested in being co-host for Build? It'll be really fun. We're expecting a huge audience and, keep devs entertained and informed. I said, oh, yeah, I can do that. That sounds fun. I've keynoted to lots of big audiences, 10,000 people to 30,000 people. It's fine. No big deal. I know a lot about devs. I'm a dev. So I show up at the production studios, and the first thing that happens is they put me in front of this thing. It's a teleprompter. And for those of you who don't know what this is, it's what news people use to read the news, and they look like they've memorized everything. It just reads you lines, or it just prints these lines, and then you go through and read them looking at this camera. So it looks like you're just talking to the camera and know these lines. Now, I have dyslexia. I don't like talking about it, but I've started to talk about it. And I cannot read this teleprompter, like at all. It's probably my worst nightmare because it's a bunch of words together in a tiny amount of space with no differentiation in color. There's no bullet points. It's just a wall of text. I can't read this at all. I have absolutely no idea what it says. I was diagnosed with dyslexia about 3 years ago during a routine eye exam, actually. I'd gone in for an eye exam. They do this thing like left or right, left or right. And I'm sitting there looking at these letters and I can't read them. like Z, X, Q, 4. And the doctor's like, no, you need a bigger, stronger prescription. So he keeps upping my prescription. And next thing you know, I'm like, oh, I have a major headache and I still can't read these letters. And the optometrist assistant, she just pulls me aside and says, do you think you have dyslexia? And I said, I don't even think I know what that word means properly. So no, I don't have it. And she says, I have a son. He can't read the letters at the eye exam either. And he has dyslexia. He's been diagnosed. So you may want to get yourself diagnosed. I said, lady, I'm just blind. It has nothing to do with dyslexia or whatever this thing is. So I leave. But her words kept coming back to me. And I reflected back on the fact that I've always had trouble reading under stressful situations. So if I'm just fine sitting by myself at home, I can read something without too much incident. But if there's scrutiny on me, I will mix up the letters. I will mix up the words. If there's letters and numbers together, like a flight number, like DL347, I will absolutely read it as FQ708 or something random like this. So I really struggle with letters and numbers together and under scrutiny. My nightmare used to be read aloud time in school, right? A lot of you have been there when you go around the room and read things out loud. I did really bad at that. So what I would do when I knew it was read aloud day, I would take the book home, check it off in the library, and then figure out where my section would be based on my sitting arrangement in the classroom. And I'd read it over and over and over again. So I'd really understand it. So I wouldn't look stupid in class when I was called on. So people wouldn't laugh at me. This had mixed results. It worked maybe 50% of the time, but I always dreaded read aloud time. So all of you educators, please don't make read aloud time the thing unless you must have it for a reason. It's really horrific for children with dyslexia. Okay, so I'm back to read aloud time here in Build, right? And I said, thanks for this amazing opportunity. I hate it. Why is this happening? So I did something that I don't like to do, but I realize I have to, which is ask for an accommodation. I told the crew, I said, hey, I have dyslexia. I need a little bit of extra help. And everyone just kind of froze. And then they sprung into action. So they said, okay, we'll figure this all out. So they gave me, you see this camera, they brought it up really close to me like here so I could read it. But they did the shooting from here so they couldn't see the camera. It was a whole weird production thing. They had to maintain social distance while doing it. But they set me up with my own camera. It followed me around so I could read it, turn to it. And then they had a big screen with my script up here at the same time. And then the most important thing, they sent me home with the script. So they sent me home with the script and gave me a lot of time, 2 full days to learn it. So they said, change it however you want, make it bullets, colors, and any changes I made in the script reflected back into the teleprompter. So I had 2 days to get very comfortable with it, to have it in my words with bullet points, and I knew what was coming next. So this happened. I hated asking for this accommodation, but Build, it went off. It went off pretty okay. And I realized I had brought my whole self to the table. Like it was probably the first time in my entire Microsoft career, 14 and a half years, that I really brought my whole self to the table. My co-host Seth was wonderful. I told him what the deal was. So helpful. If I missed a cue, he would pick it up. And we just kind of riff with each other. So by asking for these accommodations, 3 things happen. 1, the crew got really used to working with someone who has dyslexia. And this will really help with anyone else in the world they run into who might have dyslexia. Remember, 1 in 4 people have a disability of some sort. Many of them are invisible. I believe it's probably more. Second, I got very comfortable with asking for accommodation. Now I know what accommodation I even need. So if I get asked to use a teleprompter again, I'll know exactly what I need. I will tell the production people even before I get there, like, hey, I have dyslexia. I need a prompter that's close. I need to see the script. I need to control it. And the third thing is I can tell the story to all of you. So if any of you are struggling with dyslexia or any of you have children who do, please know that this is normal and this is not something to be ashamed of. Your brain is not broken. Our brains are just wired differently. It's not normal or abnormal because what is normal anyway, right? I have a friend, Joanna, who can't spot her own typos. She reads amazing. She reads like boring freaking books, but she can't spot her own typos when she writes. She's an amazing writer. Does she have dyslexia? I don't think so. It's just something else. Brains are weird. So what does this have to do with tech? I actually am making a powerful hack. I lead advocacy for a power platform, and I said, why can't I use this to solve my problems? I was going to do a demo for you, but this app is real bad. But all I'm doing is taking all my lines. Right now, they dump out into a CSV file anyway from this teleprompter app that everyone uses. And I can pull that CSV file into an Excel table and have that Excel table generate a Power App in one step. You just click like make Power App in Excel, and suddenly you've got a Power App that'll pull just my lines. I can filter a speaker down to just Dona and have all my lines show up, and then I can swipe them off once I'm done. So on the breaks, I could just look and say, oh, what do I have next? Oh, cool, I just need to know that. So I now have my phone, the big screen, and the little camera to help me navigate this terrain. So that is the deal. That's how my build went. So Dan, back to the audience. Dan and I are both we believe in this global movement called less code, more power. We believe that you don't actually have to be a professional software developer to solve your own problems with technology. And just from Power Platform itself, two things I'd like to call out is I love that Power Platform has an accessibility guidelines white paper. So every time I create a Power App, I look at the accessibility guides and make sure that it is accessible to everyone in the world. The white paper is extremely detailed. I highly recommend if you check it out. If you've never played with Power Apps before, go do it, because it really does solve all kinds of problems for you. The second thing, there's an app checker. So if you screw up like I do, there's an app checker. It's in the upper right-hand corner of the Power Apps viewer. You click on the little medicine mouse looking thing, and it'll go through and tell you where your app is not accessible. So these are all things we released in the past year, and it's been wonderful to hear feedback from all of you on using it and how we can continue to be better. So Dan, global movement, we're in it.
Yes, absolutely. And let me just say that was
yes.
Story. I'd watched you through build, and now hearing your story and what you had to go through, I respect you even more, Donna. I'd be interested to see who thinks hit the home run here, but I'm leaning towards you. Not only have you addressed the problem, you've been brave enough to share it, but you've also done something about it. You've gone out and you've built the tools. And I wonder if I could just ask you one question. How much did the tools like the immersive reader, influence you when building this Power App? Because obviously these tools are in production.
That's right. So I use immersive reader and read aloud mode for everything. So in a browser, I'll have read aloud on. I'll use immersive reader in OneNote pretty much constantly. So if I get, how execs love to send those giant emails. They get pasted into OneNote, and I use read aloud to have it, the words spaced out, read aloud to me. I use it all the time. And I'm trying to think about how to integrate that into the Power App so I can have read aloud maybe in the Power App, so I know the words that I'm seeing are what's actually written. So I'm doing a bunch of weird experiments and such with this app. So if any of you have ideas, please let me know. I just started working on this because I want to be extra prepared for my next conference. And once I write this app and create it, I want to publish it up on GitHub. So anyone in the world, download the thing, use it for whatever teleprompting needs you may have that might be just terrifyingly painful for you. So Dan and I invite you to join this global movement called Less Code, More Power. And let's keep in mind that we want this to be a global movement. This is not an abled people in Seattle movement. It's global movement. That means every person in the world of all different skills, of all different abilities, we invite you to join us. So, our mission at Microsoft is to empower every person and organization on the planet. And I hope Dan and I have proven to you and shown you today that we take the every really seriously, and we are part of the every. So Dan's actually made up a homework for you. Do you want to share it with them?
I have. Do we have the slides? So there are a number of steps that we want you to do. We want you to go off. We want you to look at building Power Apps. We want you to go off and look at the developer tools, things like bot technology. But we also want you to reach out to us. We want to hear your stories. We want to hear how well things have gone. And we really want to build this community. It's super important to us. It's not just Microsoft's mission. It's our mission too. Let's try and make things better.
Absolutely. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to try out the very first introductory Power Apps tutorial. This is what I use to learn Power Platform myself. It's at just aka.ms Power Up. And then once you graduate that, check out this random blog post I made up on a bunch of tutorials I like called Power Academy, aka.ms Power Academy. And get in touch with us because we want to hear your stories and we want to make sure that we are representing a very inclusive and diverse group of people when we speak in public. So we're both highly findable on Twitter. Dan is Azure Dan, and I'm Donna Sarkar. And both of us are findable on LinkedIn. It's Daniel Baker and Donna Sarkar. So thank you, Ability, for joining us today. Thank you for being with us. And we hope you have an amazing rest of the day. Be well, be yourselves. Thank you.